All right, welcome to the Marvel Rivals session. I am Thomas Hill. I am the head coach at Flandreau. This is now fourth year doing esports for Flandreau. A little bit about me. I competed in esports in college, and I was one of the first scholarship athletes for esports at Dakota State University a few years back, and I played a lot of Marvel Rivals. So this is the Marvel Rivals session. I'm going to explain how the game works. There's going to be a lot of explaining on how the game works because I know there's going to be a lot of people who don't play video games in here who probably want to understand how the game works. I also made this slide in a very specific way that you really do not have to take notes if you don't want to, because these slides and videos are going to be posted and sent to you later. I laid out all the information that I talk about. I left on the slides, partly just so you can go back and look at them and you just have everything that I talked about right there just by looking at it as opposed to watching the videos afterwards. So if you want to take notes, by all means, you're more than welcome to. If you have questions, we'll hopefully have time. I recorded myself giving this presentation yesterday and I went 55 minutes. So we'll see if I can get it in 45. Okay, so to start off with, we'll be talking about what we're discussing. So we're going to be talking about gameplay basics, heroes, team-ups, playstyles, team compositions, game fundamentals, any additional notes that I thought of that were important. And then some basic coaching tips to kind of round everything off. You can see right here at the bottom, I am hoping you guys get very involved in Marvel Rivals. It's a very fun game. It's Marvel superheroes. Who doesn't love superheroes, right? So I highly recommend you get involved and talking with your students and getting excited for this game. So to start off with, what is Marvel Rivals? It is a hero shooter. The whole objective of a hero shooter is you capture and push an objective as a team to some end goal, okay? So there are three different types of game modes that get played in Marvel Rivals that your students will be competing in. There's Convoy, Convergence, and Domination. What exactly are all of them? Well, Convoy, its whole objective is when the round starts, you can see the timer ticking down right there. When the round starts, you can see there's this little cart right here. It's your convoy. And your whole objective as the red team is to push that convoy through the entire map. So there's a set path that the cart will follow. You just have your players stand around it, and if there's no enemies next to it, it goes forward. So, and you just kind of continuously push it through. You can see periodically it stops. That means that there's somebody on the enemy team that is preventing it from moving forward, so you need to get them away from it so that you can push it forward. That's the whole point of the game, okay? Convergence, very similar, okay? Except this time there's a capture point. You can see this giant blue little rectangle square right there on the map. You can see that once the red team kicks all of the blue players out of there and they stand inside of it long enough, well then now they have captured that point. Once that point has been captured, now it's the exact same game mode as Convoy. There's an objective, there's your convoy right there, you push the convoy. It works the exact same, but the only difference is you have to capture a point before you start pushing it. And then Domination, this is King of the Hill. So, I mean, you just have 1 point, both teams have 1 point, and you are both competing over the exact same point, and you are trying to stay in that point and keep it captured, and you can see the progress going up on the blue team right here, as they are the ones that currently have control over the point. Once you get to 100 points, you win the round. There's best of 3 for Domination, so you have 3 rounds of trying to win 2 rounds each, okay? So what do all of these game modes have in common? This game, Marvel Rivals, is an objective-based game mode. Again, it's not important about eliminations, assists, deaths. Those do not matter. Obviously, those help you a little bit in getting these main objectives. However, they are not important to winning the game. You can technically win the game with having like half the amount of kills that the enemy team has. It is possible. It can happen. So again, this is objective-based game mode. You should be prioritizing these objectives with your students. Okay? So there's many different strategies that go into these different objectives. First one we're going to get into is the heroes. Okay, so these are your superheroes that your students are going to be playing as. They're classified into 3 different distinct roles, and they're pretty straightforward on what those distinct roles are. Vanguards, duelists, and strategists. So Vanguards, these are your tank characters. These are the ones that are going to be soaking a lot of damage, so they're going to be standing in between your team and the enemy team, and they're going to be taking the brunt of the damage that the other team is going to be dishing out. And they're going to be blocking, soaking up that damage, and preventing your other players from taking that damage. You've got your duelists. These are the damage dealers. These are the ones that are doing all the damage. So there's a lot of different ways of doing all those different damage, either by brawling, diving, dealing damage, getting out, poking, that sort of thing, which we'll get into all those here in just a little bit. And then your strategists. These are your healers. These are the ones that are going to be keeping your team alive to prevent them from dying, so that you can continue to have this team structure to help you capture those objectives. What do these all have in common? Each of them have some type of primary fire to them, which is just their normal left click when they're playing with their keyboard and mouse. They have some type of peeling ability, whether that's a way of escaping or a way of getting the enemy team off of your teammates. And each of them have a ultimate ability, which help them with team fights, and all of them have a passive. So what exactly does that look like? Well, here's an example character I picked. This is a strategist. This is Invisible Woman. Okay, so she is a healer because she's a strategist. So you can see that her primary fire over here in the top GIF right here, you can see her primary fire does damage. But if you, in the bottom video right there, if you angle that primary fire at a teammate, you are healing that teammate. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so with that, she also has another ability where she can either push the enemy away or pull them out of position into your team. So this would be a really good peeling ability to help get the enemy away from you or to pull them out of position so that your team can kill them. She has her passive, which she just goes invisible, and she can regain HP when she's invisible. But the second you do any ability or auto attack, you are no longer invisible, and the enemies can see you, and you're no longer healing yourself. So she has a double jump ability, which puts her in that passive, and then she just does it naturally over time as well. She has a shielding ability, which heals teammates that you put the shield on, and if you put it on yourself, it heals yourself as well. And it also provides shielding, obviously, and there's a maximum HP on the shield. The shield can break. And it also slows enemies that are next to it. So another good self-peel ability for slowing the enemies around you. She's got disruption. She throws that little ball out right there at an enemy. It'll knock them out of the sky. It does a little bit of damage, and it kind of pulls them into the middle of it. And then her ultimate ability, which is one of the most important abilities for every single character in the game. This is a game-changing ability. You only get it for every probably minute and a half to 3 minutes, somewhere in there. It really depends on the character, how often you get it. And so for Invisible Woman, she puts this giant cylinder down on the map that goes all the way up. And any of her teammates that are inside of it are gaining constant healing. So it's a really easy way of making sure that your team can't die. And then it slows enemies while they're inside of it. So what should your students learn in terms of characters in the game? Because there are a lot of characters in the game, okay? In my personal opinion, I think that your students should be learning every single character. This does not mean learn to play every single character. This just means learn as in know what they do. Okay, so every single character has a different play style. I do not expect your students to understand every single play style, okay? There's a lot of play styles that I don't thoroughly like to enjoy playing, and I play the game a lot. So, but I still know what every single character does in the game, so I still highly recommend that your students get familiar with the game's roster to help understand play styles and team compositions, okay? Any questions on that right now? Because if not, I've got a lot more to go. All right, let's keep it going. Okay, team ups. This just changed. There was just a huge update on Friday. I was just saying right before this presentation, we were supposed to have these presentations turned in last week on Monday for today. And last week on Tuesday, the day after I turned this in, they completely overhauled this entire mechanic. so I had to go through and change it all to make it make more sense with how it works. But I think it'll work pretty okay if I just show you the video right here on how it works. So here is an example of what team ups are. Basically, you play as a hero, you get to pick another teammate. That is another hero that is in the game, and one of two heroes. Every single character gets two heroes, and they gain some additional benefit, either an extra ability or some other type of a passive on an ability that they already have. So in this example that I have, you can see Mantis right here. She's a healer, so she can heal an ally with the Star-Lord team up, and then if you have Star-Lord on your team, you actually gain additional healing on top of that, and it's an AoE healing to your other teammates. So she already has the healing ability in her kit, but with the Star-Lord team-up, she can heal. When she heals one teammate, it's actually healing other teammates around her. And if you have Star-Lord on your team, it enhances it and makes it better. So if I just go back a slide here now, you can kind of see that laid out. Every single character gets two team-ups. There's two heroes that they partner with. You do not need that team. You do not need that player on the team. Again, with Mantis, if you have Star-Lord on your team, that's great because then she has better healing. But you can still get the team up of the AoE healing without Star-Lord being on your team. So it's something that you really got to consider. Then again, this is a new thing that they just completely overhauled on Friday when the patch dropped. So literally just a few days ago, everybody's still trying to figure out all these new things. So it's still kind of up in the air a little bit on that. Yeah, so that's kind of how team-ups are. Now getting into play styles. These are, again, something that might be important to pay attention to right now, as this is something that's a really easy question to ask your students while you're helping them understand the game, or you're trying to coach them a little bit, okay? So play styles, every single character plays differently. So with that, you can start to understand different play styles of what characters are good at doing specific things. So obviously your healer characters are really good at healing. So that's pretty straightforward. But there's a lot of other characters that don't fit into these neat little categories that kind of do all kinds of different things. So when your students are playing specific characters, I threw together an extensive but not exhaustive list of all the different playstyles and those different characters. So if your student comes to you and says, I really like to play Mr. Fantastic from the Fantastic Four, and what are my different playstyles that I can play with this character because I really like this character? Well, you could go back to this when you guys get this presentation shared to you. You can look at where Mr. Fantastic is in these different playstyles, and that can help them understand how to better utilize the character. So the first playstyle that we're going to talk about is Poke. Poke's job is to do little consistent damage to the enemy with the goal of eventually killing them if nobody's paying attention. Okay, so you're constantly poking at them a little bit, constantly prodding them a little bit, just a little bit of damage here or there, and then eventually you might get a kill if the support is not healing anybody. Okay, here is my extensive list. Again, it's not exhaustive. There are many other characters that could probably fit into this Poke category, but this is just the straightforward list that I threw together of a lot of different Poke heroes. So again, this would be when you get this presentation and you're looking at it with your students, you can go back and find, Mr. Fantastic, yeah, he's not on this list. He's not a very good Poke character, right? So then you can just kind of go on with that. But hey, look, there's Mr. Fantastic. Okay, so this next playstyle is a Brawler playstyle. This objective of the Brawler's job is to try and stand in the front line and to deal meaningful damage to the enemies, and you're trying to kill them from their front line to their back line. So Poke characters, you're kind of just poking anybody on the enemy team. You could be poking the front line, you could be poking the back line, right? But with a Brawler's job, they're fighting the front line. They're fighting those Vanguard, those really tanky characters. They're fighting them, and then they're trying to push through them to get to the squishy characters in the back. So here's an extensive list of a bunch of different Brawler characters. Again, it's not exhaustive. Some other characters could fall into this category. Pressure picks are kind of similar to Brawler in that they are fighting from the front line to the back line. However, they're exerting more than just fighting the enemy tanks. This can be either you're bursting them, and so they have to respect the damage, and they just need to back up and get away from you because you're doing too much damage, right? And so they're kind of similar, but they're also not. Again, my example that I have right here is Storm. I love Storm. I have like an 85% win rate on this character in ranked. Like I'm crazy on this character, and this character is so good at exerting pressure on the enemy. They just have to respect what she does, and they have to back up. And so here's another list of some of the characters that are really good at pressure. Diver's job is in the name, they dive, okay? So they jump into the enemy backline and they dive in, and they're trying to disrupt the team either by killing people or just distracting them so that your team can now walk in to the objective and push them out or whatever it is that your team is trying to do in that moment, okay? Here's an example of some dive heroes that can just jump into the middle of the enemy team. Okay, flank characters, very similar to dive characters in that they're jumping into the enemy backline. However, with flank characters, they're doing it from an off angle. Say divers, you can just walk straight into the middle of their team, jump right over the front line, and do a bunch of damage into the back line. Flankers, they're at off angles. They're hiding in a corner, and then all of a sudden, when your team is ready, they jump into the back line and start disrupting everyone. Okay, so they have a little bit of a different play style, and some of these characters on here, like Luna Snow and Adam Warlock, are very difficult, and Cyclops are very difficult to flank, but you can have some very effective games. I have had some very effective games playing Cyclops and playing Luna Snow on flank. I'm not an Adam player, so but Adam's a support character and Luna's a support character. Like they're strategists, they're healers, but they can actually do a lot of damage by flanking. So that's something you got to be wary about a little bit. Peel and anti-dive. Peeling is the act of protecting heroes. So again, that's getting enemies away from your teammates, basically, or yourself, right? So it's just getting you or the enemy away from you or your teammate. Okay, so anytime that the enemy dives into your backline, right? A peeling character is somebody who's really good at getting that diver away from your backline, or maybe just outright stunning them and then killing them afterwards, right? So these are your bodyguard characters. So here is a good list of characters that are very good at that. You can see Mr. Fantastic is right here. He is great at doing anti-dive and peel. And so again, these are your bodyguard characters a little bit. So very fun play style. Shield characters. These are characters that put up a giant shield and block damage. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so that way they're not taking the damage, but no one on your team is taking the damage either, right? So that's pretty nice, pretty straightforward on that one. There are more shield characters in the game. A good example is with the new team up system that just came out on Friday. Penny Parker, one of the support characters, or one of the Vanguard characters, just got a shield team up where now she has a shield. She didn't have that originally, so she's not on this list because it is a team up. She'll lose it eventually, probably. It might take a few years, but she might eventually lose it. So I didn't feel like putting her on the list. And again, it's extensive list, not exhaustive. I didn't go through every single character perfectly. I just said these characters are good at these things. There we go. And then a control. These ones, it's in the name of what their job is. They are control characters. They're good at controlling something, some aspect of the game. Either preventing or controlling space, preventing the enemy team from walking in. These characters are really good on the domination maps because, again, the domination is king of the hill. So if you have control over the hill, then it's really difficult for the enemy team to come in and capture that objective from them. So these are the characters that are really good at holding space and standing in one spot and not moving. Okay? Or they're really good at exerting a little bit of pressure that will cause the enemy, because of how much control they have, if you just step up a little bit forward, it'll cause the enemy to have to step back a little bit because you're so good at controlling the space that you just walked up and took. So here's an example of some characters that are really good at controlling a certain space. Your healers, again, these are your strategists. So every single strategist falls into this category. Their job is healing. Pretty straightforward. And then here is a list of all of the healing heroes. Again, some team ups. There are some team ups in the game. You can see the bottom two right down there, Hawkeye and Groot. They have team ups that give them healing to their team. So I threw them on there because they're like okay healing, so it's not bad. So I figured they'd be thrown on there a little bit. Buff and debuff characters. These ones are going to be for your students who are really good at communicating. These are going to be the characters that they should be playing a little bit of, or you should maybe see if they enjoy playing some of these play styles. Okay, so these are the characters that either buff your team, making it to where your team is stronger for a short period of time. And so if you can communicate that information effectively with your team when you're buffing, then it can make for some really good team fights and being able to take back some space. And also debuffing of being able to make the enemy weaker for a short period of time. So you're making them worse, and so in turn you are better, and then you can do the exact same effect in taking space, killing somebody, whatever it is. Okay, so there's a few different buff and debuff characters in the game. Not a whole bunch of them. I mean, the best buff and debuff characters again is like from the gift that I showed you, Storm. She's really good at buffing the team in both movement speed and damage. So she just is a really good powerhouse, pressure pick and damage amplifying character. Playstyle notes again. I wanted to note on there these lists of all the heroes that I put on these different pages. These heroes right here, it's not every single buff and debuff character in the game, although I think I did a pretty good job on all the buff and debuff characters. Maybe some of the other categories like poke, where it's a little bit more ambiguous. There's a little bit of ambiguity to it on where do they qualify as poke, do they not qualify as poke, that sort of thing. Because again, poke is just doing a little bit of damage here or there, consistent damage. So a lot of characters in the game fall under that category. But again, they're not exhaustive. I didn't list every single character on here. On Friday, again, they just introduced a new strategist character, Jubilee. She just got added to the game. I don't even have her on this presentation anywhere. So, I mean, but from the little bit of time I've played her over the weekend, she's a healer. She's pretty good control. She's got good poke, and she also has good pressure. So those are the 4 categories I'd probably throw her under. So again, when you're talking with your students and you're trying to figure out different things that they like, again, you can see that, if they really like to play Storm right here, and they're like, I really love playing Storm. Well, Storm is a buff and debuff character. Storm is also a poke character. Storm is also a pressure character. So you can help to show them these different roles that they should be doing with these characters. And these roles are going to fluctuate all the time during the game. Okay, and we'll get into how they fluctuate throughout the game right now with our team compositions. So for our team compositions, since there are many different heroes and team ups in the game, there are many different compositions that you can run. So there's different strategies that you can run with these characters. Okay, the first strategy I'm going to tell you about is a 2-2-2 comp. Okay, this is just usually in Marvel Rivals, everyone just refers to it as the number. This is just your standard composition. It's a 2-2-2. You got 2 vanguards, 2 duelists, 2 strategists. Okay, these are the teams that you should probably be having your students practice more often than not. Okay, having 2 vanguards, 2 strategists, 2 duelists, because you have a nice standardization across the board from all of the roles. So you can see 2 tanks, 2 strategists, 2 DPS over there, solid front line, solid space control from the front line. You've got really good healing, and you've got solid DPS. Okay, and again, these can change depending on your play styles, right? Right now, I've got Hela and Namor over there for my poke characters. For this standard 2-2-2 comp, but you don't have to run them. You could run dive characters if you wanted to run like Daredevil and you wanted to run like Spider-Man or something like that, right? So you can run these dive characters, and just changing out your DPS like that completely changes the way that your team is going to be playing. So these are all important things to kind of think of in the back of your mind with them. This team composition, the 2-2-2 comp, is very flexible. Again, you can run them in a variety of different ways, as I was just saying. And this is kind of why I highly recommend this one the most, is because if somebody's having a bad game, there's somebody else in that role that can pick up the slack a little bit, right? If you have one person that's playing a strategist, they're healing, right? And they're constantly getting killed because there's a flank person on the enemy team that keeps flanking them and killing them. Well, you still have another person playing strategist that can pick up the slack and do a little bit more healing or try to heal a little bit more, right? So that's why I recommend this comp. It's very straightforward. There's a lot of flexibility to it, and it's a very good comp. Next composition is a 2-1-3 comp. This is typically called a triple support comp, okay? Pretty straightforward. You run triple strategist, 3 healers. And you only run one DPS and then 2 tanks. So you've got 2 tanks that are really good at holding space. You've got 3 healers that's going to keep everyone alive. No one's going to be dying. And then you've got 1 person that's going to be trying to be all the damage, trying to kill everyone. Okay, so this composition is great at stalling, as it's hard to take space into. They're really good at not dying, and they're really good at not moving because they're not dying. So you can just kind of just persist there constantly, and there's not a whole lot the enemy team can do oftentimes. So this composition gives you really solid frontline, as I said, the best healing, but it gives you low damage output. This composition is for, this is kind of the most important bit right here. It's difficult to prove better on. Again, you don't play a triple support comp to say I'm better than you. You play a triple support comp to say prove you are better than me. Okay, so you put all the pressure on them to do all the work when you are playing a triple support comp. So again, it's hard for your team to start to snowball and kill the enemies when you're playing triple support, but it is much harder for them to prove that to you. So that's kind of when you would be playing this composition. Okay, yeah, again, the team is harder to eliminate anyone, but because you have the sustain to keep the space and the teammates, and so it's hard for anyone to kill you, and therefore it's hard to give up all that space. Additional information, since this team composition lacks a lot of damage, because again, you're only running 1 damage character, the Punisher, right? In this example that I have, it's hard to kill people, but you can change that depending on these different play styles that I had already mentioned with that. So you can see I picked this composition for a very specific reason. Ultron right here is a strategist, he's a healer, but he actually does really good damage just with his base kit. And he also has a drone that he can put on teammates that heals them and gives them extra damage. So if you have less damage on your team because you're only relying on one person that's doing damage, well, you just put a drone on them and now they're doing 10% more damage. So, I mean, that can help make up that little bit of lacking that you're having in the kit just from one pick that you have on the team. Okay, Punisher, he's really high DPS. That's damage per second. He's putting out a lot of numbers really quick. Okay, so that's just a really solid person to have on a triple support comp. Groot, again, he's really great control. He's one of the best control characters in the game. He's great at planting himself at one spot and setting up his walls, and it's hard to push him out. Hard to kill him, especially when you have 3 supports healing him. Okay, Captain America is really good at stalling and disrupting. He just kind of jumps around and is just a giant nuisance. So it's really hard to deal with him as the enemy team. And then White Fox is actually a support character. This one right here is a strategist, but she actually does insane damage. She can actually 100 to 0 somebody in a second. So, I mean, you can only do that every now and again with her kit, but she can just 100 to 0 somebody instantly. So even though she is a strategist, she is a healer, she actually has really good damage. Okay, it's really good burst damage. Here's another team composition. This is your aggressive comp. This is your 1-3-2. You run one Vanguard, 3 duelists, and 2 strategists. So you're running 2 healers, 3 damage, and 1 tank. This composition is the hardest comp to play out of all the comps that I have listed here. Because of this, because you only have 1 tank, if the enemy team has the pressure, if they're the ones that are pushing in to your team will just fold instantly because they'll just walk right over your front line and they'll go straight to your back line and they're going to kill you all, right? So it's really difficult because you don't have that solid front line of the 2 tanks to help kind of facilitate and soak up a lot of the damage and protect your team. This team folds under a lot of pressure. So if you are getting pressured out, this is not the comp for you. If you are the one doing the pressure, this is a great comp for you. Okay? Really weak front line, good at healing, and really high damage output. Again, this is again the most difficult comp to play. The most important thing with this one is communication is the most important with this comp. Because you don't have that front line to help facilitate the whole team, you only have one front line doing that. It is really difficult. That's a lot of pressure on one player. And so because of that, you need to make sure that your communication is really good with your players in order for this to be working. Because again, if there is a pressure or brawler comp on the enemy side, if they're the ones dealing all the pressure and brawling to you, your front line will just die. And then when your front line's dead, then there goes the rest of your team. Goats, this is the last comp I'm going to talk about. Goats is an Overwatch comp from like 2018, I want to say. Something like that. It's pretty old at this point. But this is when you run triple tank and triple healer. So the whole point of this comp is if you thought stalling with a triple support comp was good, well, take a triple support comp and add an extra 500 HP onto that composition. And now it's almost impossible to kill anybody. Okay? So this composition, the whole point of this comp is to just waste time on the clock. Again, the enemy team has to be the ones to push in to your domination point, your King of the Hill point, right? And you have point control right now. They have to kill all of you to capture that objective. Well, now if you just play triple tank, triple healers, they're not killing anybody, so they're never capturing that point, right? So that's kind of the strategy behind this comp a little bit. And again, you don't have damage. You're not killing anyone on their team unless all your tanks are in sync with one another with good communication. So you have unkillable healing because you have supports or vanguards protecting the strategist the whole time. And so they're constantly healing up the team, making them all nice and good. And then your front line will just never let your opponent take space. So that's kind of our compositions. Those are those straightforward compositions. There are other compositions, but I feel like those are the most important ones that I would recommend to your students. Again, the one that I would not recommend the most is probably the aggressive comp. Again, 1 front line, 3 damage, and 2 supports. I would not recommend that one. That one is a little bit more difficult. You need good communication to make that one work. If you have the good communication, by all means, make it work. Okay? Game fundamentals. Again, Rivals is an objective-based game. Again, eliminations, deaths, and assists do not matter. Okay? It's all about pushing that objective to the end of the map or capturing that King of the Hill point and never giving it up. Okay? So just because somebody, now this is probably something that your students will do at some point, they're going to say, well, I had 20 final kills, so I did all the work that game. What was everyone else doing? It's not quite how that works, right? Because if you're getting 20 kills as the strategist, what does that probably mean that you weren't doing because you were too busy killing everyone? You weren't healing anybody, right? So that just because you had good stats on the board at the end of the game does not mean that you were doing your job, okay? So that's one of the most important things I want to stress about that, because you will have students that will say, well, look at the scoreboard, I did so good. And it's like, that's not quite how that works, okay? So the scoreboard is a cool little thing to look at, but at the end of the day, you can be not doing your job and still have a good scoreboard at the end of the game. So, game fundamentals. These are kind of the topics that are difficult to discuss because it's nothing tangible that you can actively see in terms of like a character, that sort of thing. So positioning, this is a really, really big one. That's why I'm putting it down first for game fundamentals. So this is probably the most important thing. Positioning is super important. Every single player needs to know what their positioning is and what it is that they're supposed to be doing. So if you want, and again, the games change every single game based off the enemy team. Okay, so you can have the exact same comp game after game after game after game after game, and you'll still end up losing a game just because you weren't positioning properly, right? So positioning is a really important thing because again, and it changes based off the enemies. So here's my example. So with this, it's a standard 2-2-2 comp. So we've got two strategists and we got 2 DPS right here. Mr. Fantastic up there pressuring at doing his brawler playstyle. And then you got your 2 tanks right here. And then we got our 2 tanks right here, 2 DPS, 2 supports back there. So pretty standard positioning right here. You can see we've got the objective right here. We're pushing the objective this direction. So blue team is standing on the objective because if you have 3 people on the cart, it moves faster, up to 3 players. So if you get 4 or more, it doesn't actually increase it. Only 3 people need to stand on the cart, okay? It'll get pushing forward. So you can see with this positioning, it's pretty standard, okay? So pretty straightforward for both teams, right? And so it's pretty easy for blue team to push up with this positioning. Again, there are 2 front 9s up there with a pressure, and with that brawler and pressure being Mr. Fantastic. He's able to push into the front 9 very easily. And then you got your poke character, Phoenix here in the back, and you got your 2 healers healing them, keeping everyone alive, okay? The healers are all the way in the back because then they can see everybody so they can heal everybody. Pretty straightforward, okay? But this composition does not necessarily work if we just swap up the playstyles and the characters that the enemy team is playing. Now you can see that I switched out 4 of the players on the red team with dive characters and flank characters. So now we've got a Black Cat, Venom, Spider-Man, and White Fox that are all diving into the back line of blue team. And now blue team is actually going to die because they're basically fighting a 4v3 right here with this exact same positioning. So just because the composition on paper, again, blue team's composition on paper, again, it's in the exact same formation it was before, which looks great in this game. Well, again, if we just change one little itty-bitty thing, now it's completely different, and now that team is falling apart. Okay, so positioning is really important. So what we would have to do instead is we just have to reposition a little bit where our blue team members are at, and now this would be a much better and more favorable matchup for blue team to win this fight. So now we brought Mr. Fantastic and Rogue back from the front line, and you can see Dr. Strange even stepped back a little bit closer to the team, okay? And now Mr. Fantastic and Rogue are kind of sitting in between the divers right here and the strategist and the poke duelist. And so with this positioning, it's much easier for blue team to handle this situation. And you'll note right down here that Mr. Fantastic and Rogue are no longer playing the pressure characters that they were before. So again, they were originally in this example, they were originally playing pressure characters. They're putting a lot of pressure on the enemy team. They're brawling in the front line, right? So they're constantly trying to push in to take space for the objective to move forward, okay? But now they are no longer pushing up and taking that space. They are instead now, they are peeling. They are now anti-dive characters. They're playing anti-dive. They are now supporting the team, trying to push the enemies away from their supports. So they didn't swap characters. They're not playing a different character. They're just playing a different play style with that same character. Okay? And so constantly throughout the game, there's this ebb and flow, back and forth pull of what your job is constantly throughout the game. You started off playing a pressure brawler character on the front line, doing a lot of damage on the enemy front line. Well, now they're playing divers. Now you need to switch gears, and now you need to be playing as a peel and anti-dive character. You're still playing the exact same character, you still have all the same abilities, that sort of thing, but you just have to play the character differently, okay? So yeah, this is why characters have multiple roles, so that you can flex between those different play styles throughout the game. Again, that's why there's 3 different categories of what the heroes are, but there's like 10 or so different play styles for those characters. Next thing with positioning is aggressive posturing. So after you take an objective, you can see right down here, blue team took the objective right here, and now they're pushing up in between the objective and the enemy team. So whenever you take an objective, you want to prevent the opposing team from taking that objective again. So where should you be positioning? Well, you should be positioning in between the objective and where the enemy team is. So if your team kills the enemy team, they should be pressuring forward, they should be stepping up forward in front of the objective to try and stop them from coming in to retaking that objective, okay? So it's all about space control a little bit. There's a lot of space control in this, which is the next thing I'll be talking about here in a second. So they need to aggressively posture in between the objective and the enemy team. Again, this is it's kind of a hard thing to explain, but again, if you have the objective, prevent the enemy team from getting to that objective again. Just stand in between them, okay? So space is probably the next most important thing to positioning. Again, space is this thing that's hard to understand a little bit, okay? So space is basically what your teams are always fighting over, essentially, okay? So it looks like you're fighting each other. That's the easy, tangible thing that you can see. You can see the 2 teams fighting each other, but they're actually fighting over space. So here you can see I put a video, if it'll play. You just want to click play on that? I had it set to autoplay, I don't know why it's not. But right here you can see I put these little circles around the team so you can kind of get an idea on what the space looks like for the team. So you can see right here with red team, you just want to play that again? Yeah. You can see right here with the red team, the space that they're currently controlling where their team is much more together and cohesive, and it's much easier with that to push in to the enemy team. You can see that the Devil Dino right here, the dinosaur, is stepping up way too far away from his team. Again, his strategists are way back here, his healers are way back there. He's way too far forward, and so because of that, you're stretching out the space that the team is exerting on the field. And then so in turn, when you want to go ahead and hit play on that, eventually because he stepped up too far, it's really easy to get eaten up by the red team's space that they have controlled, and then now they get a pick, and then now they get all the momentum. So now with this, the team fight goes, the blue team crumbles, and then red team captures the objective here. So that is kind of how that process works a little bit. So this is just the same video, you don't have to hit necessarily play on it. But again, important thing to keep your space connected. You do not want to break off into little islands. You don't want a few characters over here and then way over here a few other people playing, right? You want to try and keep your team relatively cohesive into one relative area where they can all see each other and help each other out. The closer your team is to each other, the better your team structure is, okay? There's a lot of times that this happened a lot with my students this last year, where we had our strategists that would just die because of flank characters. And then I would just tell them, you're too far back. Like, you are too far away from your front line. So your front line is really good at peeling and anti-dive. They're really good at getting the enemies off of you. So if you're dying to the enemies a lot, you need to be closer to them so that they can help you get those enemies away from you. So your teammates are there to help you. They're not a hindrance to you. So you should be closer to them so they can help you, okay? Again, be mindful of divers and flanks because they force these islands. They'll dive into the middle of the team, and now that giant circle that you had on the team, they're now created their own little pocket space that they're controlling in the middle of your team, and that breaks up your team and that cohesion. So always be mindful of that space a little bit. It's really hard to understand, but I promise when you're watching these games afterwards, it'll start to make a little bit more sense and be easier to spot these things. Okay, so here's my football example. I'm sure some people love football. I'm not a football person myself. The Tour de France is going on today, and I missed it this morning, so it's stage 10, so that's my sport that I like to watch. But you can see with my football example right here, you can see the flank, brawler, end pressure, and divers are all trying to jump in right there to try and, in this case, in football, trying to sack the quarterback. But with the example of Marvel Rivals, the quarterback is going to throw the ball, and the rest of his job is to protect him. So you can kind of replace the quarterback in this example with realistically anyone on the team, because your whole team's job is to protect each other. Okay, so you want to try and keep that circle, that space that your team is controlling. You want to try and keep that as much and as coherent as possible. So again, just replace the quarterback with anyone on the team, and it makes sense on what you need to do. You need to protect each other to make sure that those divers or anyone can't come in and kill anybody on your team. Otherwise, you're going to be losing objectives. Game fundamentals, comms, communications. Okay. I'm sure in some of the other sessions you've already heard, communication is one of the most important things in Marvel Rivals, as it is in any esports. Okay, you need to be talking with one another. Your team doesn't know your cooldowns, or you don't know your teammates' cooldowns. Your team cannot read the mind of when you want to go in, when you want to dive as a dive player, right? The strategist can't keep an eye on everyone 24/7. So if you're low on HP, you need to say, "Hey, I'm low on HP, heal me." And then your strategist will say, "Oh, where are you?" And then they'll heal you, right? So you need to be communicating this information to your teammates. So here's some examples over here of like some really simple comms. So you can say, "I'm going in," right? So that's when you're a dive player or a flank character and you want to go in and get a pick, or just cause some disturbance to ruin the team composition a little bit. Really simple, really quick. I'm going in. That's all it takes. Okay. I'm ulting. Okay. So I'm using my ultimate. Again, the ultimate's your strongest ability on every single character. So when you're using an ultimate, you should be communicating that you're using that really strong ability. Stunning in 3, 2, 1. A nice little countdown makes it really easy for everyone to come in sync with one another. You usually partner that "I'm stunning in 3, 2, 1" with who you're stunning. "I'm stunning Mr. Fantastic, 3, 2, 1." And then now your whole team can now kill the stunned Mr. Fantastic, right? Give them space. That's the call to like get out, right? Just get away from them. Can we fight this? Sometimes comms should just be questions, really simple, straightforward questions. Hey, what should we be doing right now? Can we do this, right? And just engaging what the other players think, because again, you don't get to see what everyone else sees. So maybe they see that there's 2 flank players sitting right there and they're ready for us to step up because now they can flank us, right? So you should be communicating, "Can we go in right now?" And they'll say, "No, there's some flank characters, back up, play safe," that kind of thing. So communicate that information. How close are we to ultimates? So, I mean, again, ultimates, very strong ability. You should be communicating when you want to use them and how close you are to getting them. You can also press tab and check them, but sometimes in the heat of the moment, you can't press tab to check because you're dealing with someone. Sometimes it's the front line and they're front lining, so they can't really press tab and still be blocking damage, that sort of thing. They have to be paying attention. I got a pick, go in. This is a really important comm because when somebody dies on the enemy team, they respawn in 10 seconds. That gives you 10 seconds to act on the fact that you're now playing a 6v5. So you need to make sure that your students are communicating that information so that they can pressure in and do something with that. For those of you at state this last year, you probably heard me say this a lot in between every single game, before every single game. Anytime that we had a timeout or anything like that, I would say this every single time. I say, "Clear comms, clear comms, clear comms." I'd say 3 or 4 times. Okay? So when I use it with my students, I use it with 2 different meanings. Clear comms, meaning clearly communicate what it is that you're trying to say, right? So tell them what you want to tell them. Hey, can we fight this, right? That is very clear, that is very direct on what it is that you're trying to do, right? But I also say clear comms so that students will stop saying useless information, okay? I'm show of hands or not, you don't have to. How many of you saw your students this last year where one of them dies and then they go, "Oh my God, I just died. I can't believe that just happened. This is so ridiculous. Like what? I can't believe this character just did that to me. Like how is that balanced? NetEase, please." Right? So that probably happened a fair amount of times. Now, does that necessarily help your team in any way when one student just starts complaining about nothing? No, it doesn't help them. So clearing comms means, hey, shut up, okay? Don't be saying that, okay? It doesn't help the team, okay? Now, if instead you said, "Oh my God, I just died to X person's ultimate," well, then that's a little bit different because at least you said that, somebody used an ultimate, right? You communicated that piece of information. So it helps out a little bit. But just, again, clear comms, it's a really simple phrase that I use with my students. They all know what it means and it all helps them out. And now I have my own students saying it constantly throughout the game too because I've kind of hounded it into them a little bit. So just kind of a nice little phrase I recommend using. With comms, another really important thing is a shot caller. This is your person on the team that is going to be making all the calls. They say, "Hey, we're going in." If the shot caller says, "Hey, we're going in," everybody should be going in. Everybody should be listening to that call. Okay? Now, with that, there's always the issue of, everybody go in, and then the whole team gets wiped, and everyone died. It's like, well, you just told us to go in, we all went in and we died. Yeah, that happens sometimes, okay? Does that mean it was a bad call? Yeah, probably it was a bad call. But the difference is that the team worked together on that bad call. You guys had trust in each other, and that is a really more important thing than the loss of one team fight, okay? So again, when a shot caller makes a call, I really encourage you to encourage your students to follow up on that call, okay? And if the shot caller isn't working, they're always making bad calls, have somebody else try being a shot caller, right? Have them be the ones to make the call, someone different, okay? This last year, I had one of my DPS players play it. And he was he would play pressure picks in the front line. So he'd be in the front line and he would always want to make plays. And so he would always be the shot caller because he would always want to be the one to start something for the team. And then he would expect the team to follow up on that. So that is something that I recommend having one person that when they make a call, everyone follows. Yes. Oh no. Can I, in conclusion, that means I get 5 more minutes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Using the maps. There's different parts of the maps. Every single map has, or most maps have some type of gimmick to them, where you can like throw them off the map, or there's like fog or something like that to protect your team, that sort of thing. Have your students make sure they know how to utilize those different map mechanics. So just know where the holes are on the map, on where you can throw people into a hole, right? That sort of thing. Picks are, again, these are your poke characters. Your poke characters are poking somebody and all of a sudden they kill somebody. So this is a pick, okay? When somebody gets a pick, again, it's important for your shot caller or anybody to now make the call, hey, go in, start attacking, okay? And there's very little time to capitalize on that. Stalling, again, we talked about stalling a little bit. You're just eating away at the time. If you have the site and you have control of the site, stalling is a great way to stop your team from getting control of that space. So right here in this video, you can see I'm playing group, and I'm just putting up walls, and I'm just standing in that little box right there where the cart is. And they can't push the cart forward because I'm still standing in it. And I just have these walls that are protecting me, and I'm just stalling the clock. I'm just eating up time. I'm not doing anything. I'm just eating up time. But it's still effective. Counter swapping. This is really important. If your team is struggling into a certain pick, counter swapping is very good. 2 different types of counter swapping. There's the aggressive counter swap. You can see in this example, I say Devil Dinosaur is on the enemy team. He's a really big damage character, or he's a really big vanguard. Has a lot of HP, hard to kill because he has so much HP. So in turn, you can counter swap one of your DPS players to a different DPS character that has a lot more damage per second, can do a lot more damage a lot quicker. So you can just swap them to that. That would be an aggressive counter swap. And then there's a defensive counter swap. If your team is getting dove from a Spider-Man in your backline, well then counter swap to a thing, and now you have protected your team because the thing has insane self-peel for the team. He has great anti-air, so people can't use movement abilities. He counters movement as well. And he also gives damage reduction to teammates, so they take less damage for a short period of time. So he's really good. Metas. Meta is the game beyond the game. So metas are typically good. Find a meta that works for your students. Find a strategy that works for your students, okay? If they can't figure out a strategy, look some up. There's plenty of strategies online. I'm trying to go through these as quick as possible, Molly. In conclusion, I get 5 more minutes. All right, so Hero Ultimates. Hero Ultimates. Every single ultimate is different. No ultimates are the same. None of them are created equally. There are some broken ultimates in the game that are literally the best ultimates in the game. I'm looking at you, Gambit. Okay, so with that, you should be keeping those picks in mind for your team. You should be having players be looking at those characters. Just because they have a strong ultimate means that they're probably a good character you should be playing on the team. So I just listed a few really simple ones down here on some really good ultimates that if you can utilize them effectively can really just change the game in a team fight. Portal. I'm not going to get into Portal. You can get through this with your students. I'll skip through that. Plenty of Portal stuff. Additional notes. Picks and bans. So picks and bans in Fenworks, they do 4 bans and 2 picks, or 2 saves is what you get, where you get to ban out the enemy, but you don't actually ban out yourself with those in the game. So how it works down here, this is an example that I stole from Rapid City Stevens. I apologize if I'm picking on you, Stevens. But down here, you can see this was the match at state.
that we played against them. You can see down here, we banned Gambit because at the time he had the best ultimate in the game. So we banned him out because we didn't want them to have the best ultimate in the game. And then we saved it for ourselves. Now we get to have the best ultimate in the game and you don't. Haha, joke's on you, right? And then you can see we banned out a Moon Knight right there. He's a really good damage character. Giant AoE space control. So we just took that off of their team. We didn't want them to be playing all that space control. And then we banned out 2 really good supports, and we saved a support that we wanted to play. Okay? Meanwhile, versus Stevens, they did some respect bans, are what they're called, which is where you're specifically banning out one person on the enemy team. They banned out 1 student that played Hawkeye on my team. They banned out 0 students that played Spider-Man on my team. They saved Bruce Banner, which we weren't going to ban Bruce Banner, so that's kind of a wasted save. And then they banned out 1 student that played Wolverine, and then they saved Punisher. That's actually a pretty good save. And then they banned out Penny Parker. 1 student of mine played Penny Parker. So from us, we banned out both supports, and we banned out both DPS because all those characters are really easy characters to play. So both of those players on the enemy team, if you did a 2-2-2 comp, could play those characters. So we are effectively getting 8 bans versus 3 bans from the enemy team, from Stevens. Okay? Because again, no one on our team played Spider-Man, so I don't know why they banned Spider-Man, but they banned it. So that's just something to kind of keep in note. Picks and bans are a really important thing. Practice picks and bans with your team. In conclusion, map knowledge. Map knowledge. Again, there's gimmicks on the map. Pay attention to those. Just know where health packs are. That's kind of a really important thing to know with the different maps. And where all the flank spots are, that's another really important one. Okay, this is the most important thing. In conclusion, coaching, this is what you guys are all here for. Hey, look at that. These are the best pieces of advice that I can give you. Just watch your students play the game. That's one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give. Watch them play the game. You will start to pick up pretty quickly on these different mechanics that I tell you about. Maybe review this slideshow right before the season starts, and then now we have these thoughts in your brain and a little bit of a refresher before you get started, so it's much easier for you to understand what's happening. Okay? Again, the game is really fun, so just pay attention to your students playing and have a lot of fun with them. So here's my football analogy part 2. Again, football people, fans in the room, okay? I didn't come up with this. One of my football friends, or one of my friends who loves football and loves hero shooters came up with this. He said that vanguards are similar to the offensive line. They take the most hits, create the space for the rest of the team. Duelists are the running back and wide receivers. They utilize the space created by the vanguards to score, so the ultimate goal is easier to achieve. In this case, that's just killing the enemies so that it's easier to secure the objectives, right? So that's kind of what the duelist role is. Strategists are like the quarterback. They sit back, they watch over everyone a little bit, and they control the pace of the game. And they're ultimately the person that everyone should be protecting the most. They have the strongest ultimates in the game. And if you lose your healers, now you're losing everyone else because no one can keep you alive. So kind of keep that in mind. Rivals is like football. It is about adjustments, and they are crucial to winning. Again, counter swapping, changing a character out mid-game with a different play style or what have you is a really important thing for winning. Knowing when to fight, this is kind of a hard thing to coach, but it's really easy when you think about it as just 2 things. You've got locked in progress, you've got temporary progress. Locked in progress is when the game is about to end in King of the Hill. They're at 99% on the capture point, they're about to get 100%, they're about to win the game, and so you need to sit there and you need to fight them. You're locked into that fight, right? So knowing when to fight, you have to fight right there, otherwise you lose the game. Okay, so that's not really a choice. But there are other choices that you can make throughout the game, which would be temporary progress. Maybe they're at 34% on the capture objective. Does your team have to jump into the point and attack right then and there, even if it may be an opportune time? They could, or they could wait for the whole team to regroup and then wait for a call or a pick and then go in from there. So you can, they can gain a little bit more percentage, and they're gaining a little bit more progress, but ultimately you can actually gain a lot more benefit by not taking the fight sometimes. Management, the game is all about management. So you are managing cooldowns, you're managing healing, you're managing resources, space, comms, efficiency, etc. Okay, so just because somebody on the scoreboard says that they're doing really well in conclusion, does not mean that they are actually doing very well. So make sure that you kind of just ask some really simple questions, which is, I believe, is the next thing right here. Asking questions. When you're looking at the game afterwards, you can ask really simple questions as the coach, which help the students come up with the answers themselves. You're putting all the pressure on them, there's zero pressure on you. You don't have to have any knowledge on the game. You can just ask really simple questions, and that makes the students think, and they have to figure out what they did right or what they did wrong. Okay? Really simple question examples. What went wrong in that fight? It's a very open-ended question. The students can try and figure out, well, what went wrong in that fight? Well, I mean, both our strategists got picked off right there, so what went wrong? Well, our peel characters probably didn't do a very good job of peeling, or maybe our strategists were too far forward or too far away from the team. And now they got picked off because they were off on their own little island in their own little space. So again, that puts the pressure on the students to try and figure out what went wrong by a simple question that you asked. Should you have thought to change the heroes before this fight? Again, different play styles can drastically change how a team fight works. So if the game is about to end and you're still playing poke characters on domination and the game is about to end, well, poke characters don't really do the most fantastic when you have to stand on the objective. They're much better when they're in front of the objective, keeping people out, or when they're back away from the objective, poking people on the objective. But when you have to stand on the objective, poke characters are not very good. So maybe you should have just asked a simple question of, hey, were you playing the right character in this situation? Where was the disconnect here? Again, maybe it's just a comms thing. You just need to have a simple question for the students that they have to try and answer. VOD review. I did VOD reviews with my students all the time this last year. It helped out a ton because, again, we're not attacking anybody or accusing anybody of anything, but we're just asking very simple questions when we're looking back at the video. I can look at the video and say, hey, what were we doing? Or, hey, what's going on in this fight? And then the people can tell me what was going on in the fight. I can say, okay, what were the comms in this position? What were we talking about right here? And then they can recite that information back to me, and I can be like, nope, you guys didn't actually say that. You guys are just now saying that now, watching it back after the fact, right? That's something you should have thought about in the moment, right? So little things like that, being able to watch back what they do. Marvelous has a great video, or it has a great way of being able to find out all that information. Scrims, don't be afraid to message other teams about practicing in between season or in between matches. Okay, say Aberdeen, we scrimmed 4 times last year, something like that. Like we messaged quite a bit. We messaged twice during the season, and then twice before state. We scrimmed, I think is what it was. And so we just sent out some simple messages. Hey, we're ready to play some games. Let's just practice against each other. That helps with the picks and bans phase, which they only get to do during the regular season usually. And it can help with nerves on game day because they practiced a lot more in the actual competitive setting. It's much easier for them to be able to handle that when they are in that competitive setting. Last important thing, have fun. The game is incredibly fun. I highly recommend, again, playing it if you don't already play it. And if at the very least, watch your students play it and have fun with them. You can learn a lot just from watching them. And again, try and keep it as a fun activity for the students. It's an extracurricular. Students love it. You love it. So enjoy it with them. Any additional information, please feel free to email me, and you can email me about anything regarding this presentation, any other questions you have, if you want to set up scrims, whatever. Just feel free to message me, and I'll get back to you on that. So, thank you. In conclusion, I'm going to take 5 more minutes, even though you guys are only here for another 3. But that's all I got. So. Again, I recommend watch through this or read through this, maybe even show it to your students when the season starts. Maybe they can get some additional information just from reading through the slides, right? Don't be afraid to show them it. And by all means, please show them it. I mean, that'll help your team quite a bit.